Hey everybody! Alright, so this tutorial is going to be a 3-part tutorial. It's going to be fingerless gloves, a hat, and a cowl, all matching. And the first one is going to be for these fingerless gloves right here. And I absolutely love this yarn, this variegated yarn. It's, this one is actually, I found this at Michael's. It's impeccable loops and threads, and it is, let's see, Falling Leaves variegated, and it is a medium 4-weight, and use a 5mm crochet hook, and this time I'm actually using a 5mm crochet hook. You'll need some scissors, a little yarn needle, and for the cuff of it, I love this yarn, or you can just use any brown yarn, or actually you can use any colors you want, really. But I like the solid color, and then the variegated to kind of make those colors really pretty. This is just brown, and it's I love this yarn by Hobby Lobby. Super soft. It is very soft. This one is not as soft, but it's really not too bad, especially if it's just for your hat and gloves and stuff. Alright, so I'm gonna go ahead, take that off, and get started on the cuff part. Let me find the right end here. Okay. I'm gonna start with my slip knot. And I'm going to chain 18 plus 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, and then plus 1, 19. And from there, I'm going to do single crochet starting in the second chain from the hook. I'm actually going to turn this over and work on the back side. And I'm just going to single crochet all the way to the end. And the reason I'm working, hold on, I'll show you. In the little back loops right here, the little posts, instead of working in the front. Let me zoom in a little bit. Is because it'll make the bottom of this just like the top. Alright. So you're just single crocheting all the way across in that back loop. And go ahead and finish that, and I'll meet you at the end. Alright, I went to the end, did my last single crochet in that last stitch, and now I'm going to chain 1 and turn my work. And in this first stitch, I'm going to do a single crochet, and then I'm going to start working in the back loops only and doing single crochets. And the reason I'm going to be working in the back loops only is to create the ribbed stitch, which is the cuff part of the fingerless gloves. And just continue all the way down until you get to the last stitch. In the last stitch, you work through both loops, not the back loop. Okay, here I am at the end of that row, and I've got my last stitch, and I'm going to go through both loops on the bottom on that previous row instead of just the back loops. And I'm going to do a single crochet. Now I'm just going to continue this until I have 32 rows. Now that's going to fit my wrist size. If you need a bigger size or a smaller size, or if you don't want a cuff so long, you can always adjust both of those. So the next part would just be chain 1 and turn, and always remember in the first stitch you want to go through both loops, and then the rest of the stitches you want to go through back loops only. And then at the end go through both of those loops in the end. So the beginning stitch and the ending stitch, you want to go through both loops. The rest of the stitches, make sure you go through the back loops only. And continue that until you have approximately 32 rows. And if you need a bigger or smaller size, just make sure it's a multiple of 2 or an even number. Okay, I have my 32 rows of single crochet complete. And now I'm going to do single crochets all along that edge right there. And however many rows you have is however many single crochets you're going to have across this row. And these are actually pretty easy to do, so you just want to put your first single crochet in that first hole right there. And then there should be another hole right there. And another one right there. And just, it's going to be really easy to count, so just go in each hole that you see, and that should be, for me it'll be 32 single crochets across. If you have a smaller cuff that you're making or a larger cuff, just go by how many rows you have, and that's how many stitches you should end up with. All right. After you finish that row of single crochets, you want to make sure that the part on the outside that you're going to be seeing when you're wearing them is actually going to be in the inside when we stitch it up, okay? And we're just going to actually do some slip stitches to stitch this up. And we want to make the ribs that you see, and we want to kind of go along with that, and I'll show you how to do that. So on this front one is where I'm going to start, and it's on the back one, but we're going to start in the front one, and we're going to go into the back loop of this front one right here. And then of this one, we're going to go into the front loop. Just like that. And I'll do a couple of these so you can see it better. And then I'm going to yarn over and pull through those and pull through the one on my hook. We're going to do that all the way down. So we're going to do a back loop. And we're going to go back here and we're going to do the front loop. Yarn over, pull through that, and the one on your hook. Back loop. Front loop. Yarn over, pull through all of those. Let me zoom in here a little bit. There we go. Maybe this might be a little bit easier to see. So back loop. And front loop. Yarn over, pull through all of those. Back loop. front loop. Yarn over, pull through those and the one on your hook. Back loop, front loop, yarn over, pull through those and the one on your hook. So just continue that all the way down until you get to the very end, and I'll show you what to do after that. Alright, I finished that row of those slip stitches. Now I'm gonna pull up a big loop so that yarn doesn't come out, and then I'm going to flip it right side out because we were stitching it wrong side out. And that is the seam right there, and that just makes it go right along with the ribbed stitch effect. Alright, so that I need to tie in that little string right there. I'll do that later. Alright, I'm gonna get my loop again. Go ahead and get my hook in there. The tail is needing to be sewn in. If you want to sew in your tails, might get them out of the way. Alright, so I am just gonna, from here, once we have it right side out, I'm gonna chain one, and then I'm going to do a row of single crochets all the way around, and we're just doing them right in those little holes that you see like we did on the other edge. And it'll be the same amount as you did on the other edge, and it'd be the same amount of rows you did. So I'm gonna have 32 single crochets all the way around, just putting your hook into those holes that are already there. So go ahead and finish that, and I'll meet you back. After you finish your row of single crochets all the way around, just do a slip stitch into that first one, and you can go ahead and tie off, snip your yarn, and tie that off. Now, to make this easier, go ahead and sew in your stitches. So you can just, or sew in your tails. Alright, I have my tail sewn in, and this is the one we just finished off, and make sure you have it right side out, but I'm actually going to flip it upside down, and I'm going to start this part right here, because I want to make sure that this little piece right here, since we didn't crochet this one in the round, it's not completely flat right there, and I want to make sure it's joined. So I'm going to go ahead and get my yarn, this is my variegated yarn, do a little slip knot on there, and then start right there, just pull that through and do a slip stitch, and then I'm gonna do a single crochet right into that stitch that we just worked in. Then I'm gonna go over here, kind of hard to push in there, and then do a single crochet there, and just continue this row of single crochets all the way around. Then slip stitch when you get to that first one. Alright, that row is complete of single crochets, and I have 32 stitches around. Make sure you're keeping count of your stitches, because you don't want to skip a stitch or add an extra stitch. I'm going to chain one, and in that same stitch I'm going to do a half double crochet. So yarn over, insert your hook, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through all 3 of those. And then I am just gonna do half double crochets all the way around, and then at the end I'm going to join with a slip stitch. So continue half double crochets all the way around. Okay, I slip stitch at the end of that round, chain 1, and working in the back loops only. Now I'm gonna be using, there's actually 3 loops on the top of a half double crochet. There's one right here, one right here, and then if you flip this back, you can see the ones right here. This is the very back loop that I'm going to be working in. So not these 2, but the very back loop. And I'm just going to work single crochets. So yeah, I'm doing that, just very back loop. And that gives that little, almost looks like a knitted stitch right there. I can show you over here. Gives it this right here. Alright, so just continue those single crochets all the way around, working in the very back loop only. And join with a slip stitch at the end. I'll meet you back. After you finish that, now we are going to be working in the very first row of this little cluster stitch right here. So you'll have your base row and then your cluster, your base row, cluster. So to do the base row of that stitch, I'm just going to chain 1, and in that same space I'm going to do a single crochet, chain 1, skip 1, single crochet, chain 1, skip 1, single crochet, chain 1, skip 1, and single crochet. Continue that all the way around until I get to the end. Alright, right here I'm at 31 stitches right here, and that's my last one, my 32 stitches. So I'm going to just chain 1, and I'm gonna do a slip stitch into that first one, and that gives me my 32 stitches. Now I'm going to slip stitch over into my first chain 1 space and chain up 3. Now I'm going to do 2 double crochets together to make the cluster. So I'm just gonna wrap my yarn around, insert hook, yarn over and pull up a loop. So you have 3 loops on your hook, yarn over and pull through 2, and I'm going to do that again. Yarn over, insert into that same space, yarn over and pull up a loop. Now you've got 4, yarn over and pull through 2. Now you have 3 on your hook, yarn over and pull through all 3. So that's that chain 3 space, or chain 3 acts as part of your cluster right there. So chain 1, and we're going to skip over into our next chain 1 space. Now this one will be 3 double crochets together in a cluster. So yarn over, insert hook, pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through 2. So that's 1. Let's do that 2 more times. 2, got 3 in your hook, yarn over and do 1 more. 3. So now you've got 4 loops on your hook, yarn over and pull through all 4, chain 1, and now you're just going to continue that all the way around, and I'll do just 2 more with you. So skip over to our next chain 1 space, stitches right here. Yarn over, insert your hook, pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through 2. Yarn over, do the same thing, pull through 2, and one more time. Four loops on your hook, yarn over and pull through all 4, and then chain 1. So those are your clusters. So one more. Find my chain 1 space. Yarn over and pull through all 4 and chain 1. So continue that all the way around and I'll meet you at the end. Alright, so I just finished that row with a cluster in my last chain 1 space, and then I chained 1 and I did a slip stitch into the top of that chain 3 for our first cluster. Now I'm going to chain 1, and in this space behind, in between these clusters, so it's actually going to be right here, I'm actually going to kind of go behind that chain 1 space, and I'm going to do a single crochet into that space right there, right in between your cluster. Chain 1, skip over to that next space in between your cluster and do a single crochet. Chain 1, next space, single crochet, chain 1, next space, single crochet. Continue that all the way around. Alright, just finished my last single crochet, chain 1, and then I'm going to do a slip stitch into that first single crochet. And from there I'm going to do this row all over again. So slip stitch into your first chain 1 space and chain 3, and then do 2 doubles together for your first cluster, and chain 1 and continue that, making those clusters into your chain 1 spaces all the way around. So once you finish that second row, do another row of the single crochets, chain 1 single crochets going into in between stitches of the clusters. And I have 3 rows of clusters before I go ahead and make my opening for my thumbs. So go ahead and finish the 3 rows of clusters, and I will get back to you with this row right here. Alright, I did my 3 rows of my cluster stitch, and now I'm gonna go ahead and create my thumb hole. Now, just depending on which side you're working on, make sure the seams for both sides are right at your palm. You don't want the seams on the back of your hand showing or anything like that. So for this one, let me show you. We're actually going to be working on this row right here, and it's going to be the same, the single crochet, chain 1, single crochet, except for when you get to the thumb hole. Then you're just going to work single crochets all the way around. And what I did is I measured 4 clusters, so 1, 2, 3, 4, and that was enough for my thumb to fit through. So after the 4th cluster is when I started doing the single crochet, chain 1, single crochet again, and I did that all the way around You can use stitch markers, and I'll use these little paper clips on this one to show you how this is done. Okay, so this one is going to have my thumb hole over on this side. So I'm actually going to work all the way around until I get to this side, but I am going to mark this off. I'm going to show you right here. And then that's 1, 2, 3, and 4. Just put it right there. Alright, so that just marks it off so you might understand it just a little bit more. And you might need more for your thumb hole, but this actually gives quite a bit because I don't just put the hole right there, like I have it coming up here too, because I always want enough room for my thumb to be comfortable. Alright, so now we have our stitch markers on, and I'm going to go ahead and grab my crochet hook and get this going again. So I'm going to chain 1 from there. That's my first cluster. So I'm going to go back again, back over here, and do single crochet, chain 1, skip the cluster, go in between the clusters, single crochet, chain 1, and just continue that all the way around until you hit your stitch marker. Just kind of maneuver it and fold it as much as you can to make it easy on you. Just got a couple more. Okay, and there's my stitch marker, so I'm going to go ahead and remove that. Put my last stitch right there. Now I'm going to go ahead and do single crochets on the top of those cluster stitches and in between those cluster stitches. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then remove that and put my last single crochet in there. And then from there, I'm gonna chain 1 and then slip stitch into my first single crochet right there. Alright, so that is going to be the thumb hole right here. So go ahead and slip stitch into that chain 1 space because we're going to start our clusters again. Chain 3. Trying to adjust this camera to see if it'll focus a little bit more. Alright. There's 1, chain 1, and just continue doing your clusters until you get to the thumb hole part, okay? Alright, I finished my clusters until I got to the solid single crochets for the thumb hole. I'm going to chain 2. Then I'm going to come over here and fold it just like that. So we're going to skip all of that. And I'm going to single crochet. I'm going to slip stitch into that first stitch right there. And that gave us our thumb hole. So from there, I'm going to chain 1 and go back right here and do a single crochet, chain 1, go into that space right there, do another single crochet and chain 1, and continue that all the way around. And I'm just going to finish this real quick. Because it's a pretty fast row. And then I'm gonna do a single. I had to look at and see what I did at the other glove. Alright, I'm gonna skip this right here and put a single crochet right here in the middle of this, and then chain 1 and slip stitch to that first single crochet. Now slip stitch into that first chain 1 space and go ahead and do your clusters. So chain 3 and do your first cluster, and then continue your clusters all the way around. Alright, that's the complete row of the cluster stitch, and you just chain 1 and do a slip stitch into that chain 3 right there at the top of that. Then I chained 1, and I am going to go ahead and do a row of single crochets. Oh, that's a tight stitch. Alright. Just do it right in between and right at the top. And continue that all the way around. Alright, I finished that row of single crochets. I just did a slip stitch into that first one, and I chained 1. Now I'm going to do another row of half double crochets all the way around. And just continue half double crochets all the way around and do a slip stitch into the first one. Alright, after you finish that row, we've got 1 row left. So I'm going to chain 1, and I'm going to do a row of single crochets, and I'm going to be doing it in the back, very back loop again. first one's kind of hard to get. Hold on. All right, there we go. Single crochet, and then just continue working in that very back loop, single crochets all the way around, and do a slip stitch into your first stitch. When you're done, go ahead and snip your yarn and tie off and weave in your ends. And there is the fingerless gloves. I think these are absolutely gorgeous. They just remind me of falling leaves. Thank you for watching this tutorial. If you liked this tutorial, go ahead and hit that like button and leave a comment if you want. And also, if you are not subscribed yet, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button and that little notification bell beside that, and that will let you know anytime I make new tutorials. And there will be 2 more tutorials to this set. It's going to be a matching set of these fingerless gloves, a hat, and a cowl. So I'm going to try to do 1 more tomorrow and then 1 more the next day. So hopefully 3 days in a row you get 3 different patterns. I did not use a pattern for these. I just created these myself. I hope you enjoyed this, and happy crocheting!